of I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, if you're joining us on Facebook. The link is on our Facebook page also. Our scriptures this morning begin with Nehemiah chapter 7, verses 4 through 6, and then 61 through 65, because I didn't want to read the whole genealogy to you. Just picked out the parts that were important to me. So now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt. So my God put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been in the first to return, and this is what I found written there. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had taken captive. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town. The following came up from the towns of Tel Melah, Tel Harsha, Kerub, Adon, and Immer, but they could not show that their families were descended from Israel. The descendants of Delaiah, Tobiah, and Nekoda, 642. And from among the priests, the descendants of Hobaiah, Hakaz, and Barzillai, a man who had married a daughter of Barzillai the Gileadite, and was called by that name. These searched for their family records, but they could not find them, and so were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. The governor therefore ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food until there should be a priest ministering with the Urim and Thummim. Matthew chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. This is the genealogy of Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers, Judah the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar, Perez the father of Hezron, Hezron the father of Ram, Ram the father of Amminadab, Amminadab the father of Nahshon, Nahshon the father of Salmon, Salmon the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab, Boaz the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth, Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David. David was the father of Solomon, whose mother had been Uriah's wife. And finally, Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For has been a recurring theme song in my life. When U2 released it in 1987, I was scrambling to be accepted for the summer session at OU so I could take accounting and economics and be eligible to start pharmacy school that fall. I had graduated the year before with a bachelor's in chemical engineering, but as many of you may remember, the oil market crashed in January of '86, and not a single member of my graduating class had a job at graduation. So I went home and I spent a year substitute teaching, and that was long enough for me to realize that I am not cut out to be a classroom teacher. I love tutoring, I love the one-on-one, but the classroom was not for me. And after many discussions with my parents and others, the plan became to get my pharmacist license, work a few years, make some money, and then open a pharmacy in combination with a yarn store, because I love fiber arts of all sorts. I was not planning to be the pharmacist for this store, but it felt like a good idea to know how and to be able to cover when necessary. There was a similar pharmacy in Bartlesville run by a husband pharmacist with a cross-stitch embroidery and gift store run by his wife. So I got my degree and license in 1990, and I went to work. I met Troy, and we married in '95, and during this time, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For kind of dropped off my personal soundtrack. We had Nissa, and that pharmacy was still in the plan. It just got pushed back a little further into the future until the car wreck. Then I abandoned that plan. I couldn't see how that would ever happen because I chose, and it was a deliberate choice, to put Nissa first. I could have made a different decision. And there were people around me who expected me to make a different choice. But that was not something I could do and live with myself. And the song came back. I seemed to hear it all the time, and it pulled at my heart, but time went on. We developed routines, and we found things that worked, and I found that I was content. And the song faded away. It was no longer my personal anthem. I was busy doing what I was supposed to be doing, and although I still complained, the rewards were so much more than I can ever describe. Then it all changed in an instant last December, and I was cast adrift by the loss of my beautiful daughter and the loss of my identity in my roles of mom, teacher, and caregiver. When your life has been so regimented around someone and her needs, and suddenly none of those things are needed anymore, you feel unnecessary too. And so I began searching for the purpose for my life, and the cover of this song showed up in my YouTube feed, and it was back, playing in a loop in my head, but it resonated differently this time. I realized that my question wasn't, what am I supposed to be doing, but rather, who am I? And it was time to change tactics. I pulled out my old journals, notebooks, note cards, scraps of paper with thoughts scribbled on them, my e-notes and my iPad. I have notes everywhere. And as I was looking through all this stuff, I came across this note that I made from the introduction of Michael, the Gospel of Identity, that we did in Sunday school a few years ago. And this is a direct quote from his introduction. We seek to define ourselves in many ways: where we are from, our ethnicity, our occupation, our religion, even our gender. But none of these labels taken alone or as a whole answer the basic question of who I am. What inevitably must happen if I hope to be able to answer the ultimate question is that all these incomplete identities must be stripped away in what is most often a painful process. Only after we arrive at the end of our incomplete and false identities are we ready to receive the final and conclusive answer to the question of who we really are. And later in the introduction, he says, Matthew's gospel is about identity, about discarding the old, incomplete identities that enslave us and receiving a radical new identity. It's not your Jewish or rabbinic self or your tax-collecting self. You are not defined by the old orthodoxy, but by the new reality. All of the false, incomplete identities must go and be swallowed up in a new organizing principle. It is about surrendering whatever citizenship you define your identity by and becoming a citizen of the new kingdom, whose king is Jesus. And then last week, Scott mentioned the genealogies found in 1 Chronicles and the importance they had for the Israelites. Those genealogies helped them connect to their past and reminded them that they were God's people, whom he loved. Their genealogy was a large part of their identity, and as we read in Nehemiah, not knowing or not being able to prove your family tree could cause you to be excluded from worship and from receiving benefits that were yours by your birthright. And people today are still searching for who they are and where they come from. There is no other explanation for the popularity of Ancestry.com or the 23andMe DNA testing and other similar products. We are born with a desire to know who we are, and one place we often look is in our lineage. And that brings me to the second genealogy we read, Jesus' family tree. I only included part of it because it is the part that I think is really important for helping me know that I am included in God's family tree. Matthew included something unusual in the genealogy he gives for Jesus in these first 7 verses. There are 4 women on the list, and 2 of those women were definitely not Jewish by birth, and the other 2 were probably not. Rahab was from Jericho. Ruth was a Moabite. Judah got Tamar as a wife for his son while he was living among the Canaanites. And Bathsheba was married to a Hittite, so it was unlikely that she was born Jewish. These 4 women remind us that we as Gentiles have a place in the future God had planned for his people. We get to belong, and that is very good news. So what does it mean to get to belong to the kingdom of God? First, it's a reminder that we are created in the image of God. Paul emphasizes this in his letter to the Colossians, chapter 3, verse 10, when he writes that we have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. We get to be new and to have new knowledge of how we are like our Creator. We belong and we gain knowledge of who God is and who we are when we are in relationship with Him. As amazing and understanding as this was, I was still searching for who I am. So next, I decided to take a look at the words in red. How does Jesus describe those who believe in Him and follow Him? In other words, what does He say about the citizens in His kingdom? The first "you are" statement I found was in Matthew 5:13 through 16. Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth and the light of the world." As salt, we provide the world with taste and flavor, but we also provide preservation by offering His salvation to the world when we share our stories. It can be grueling to share our testimonies because people have accepted the lie that if we are following Jesus, then everything should be perfect and nothing could be further from the truth. I found my most trying circumstances occur when I'm making a big step towards God, usually by surrendering more of my tight grip on things I want to control and trusting Him. When I don't press into that growth and that trust, that's when I lose my saltiness, and I'm not useful in advancing the kingdom. But it's hard to let go and to trust Him when things aren't going as I had planned. The second part of that passage tells us that we are the light of the world. Light brings illumination, revelation, and guidance. It's a word I associate with joy. His joy that pulls me out of depression and shines hope into my days. And maybe, just maybe, brightens the world around me just a little as I reflect His glory. I found many more identities that Jesus gives to His followers. We could be here all afternoon, but I'm going to give you the short list. Mark, Matthew, and Luke all record that Jesus says, "Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." Matthew 10:30 tells us that God knows us so well that even the hairs on our heads are numbered. John 8:32 tells us that we are free. John 15:5 invites us to be His branches and to be fruitful. Verse 14 calls us His friends when we are obedient. And most amazing of all, Jesus prays for us in John 17:20 through 23. It's a beautiful prayer. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. I pray that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I and them, and you and me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Jesus requests that we may be given unity with each other, with the Father, and with Himself. He asks that His glory be shared with us, and He asks that the world can see and know how much He and the Father love us. It's pretty wonderful. So, we are salt, light, family, known, free, growing, friends, unified, and loved. So do I know who I am? I'm going to have to say no, not yet. But I do know who I'm running to. And I'm going to remember what Rachel Wojo had to say in her book, One More Step. Sometimes our perspective, the waiting and wandering in the desert, continues pointlessly on and on. God never leaves us waiting on our own. He is always with us. How He longs to draw us close to Him so that no matter our situation, no matter our desert, we can experience the gift of His presence. More than anything, He wants a close relationship with us. What we often perceive as waiting is actually God's wooing. And as I'm waiting, I'm going to put into practice the words of Matthew 7:7 and 8. And I love the Holman Christian Standard Bible translation for this. It says, "Keep asking, and it will be given to you. Keep searching, and you will find. Keep knocking, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who searches finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Amen. So if you will please stand, if you're able, and join in our hymn of invitation, Jesus is Calling.
Calling you home, calling today, calling today. Why from the sunshine of love will you roam, farther and farther away? Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today. Jesus is waiting, oh come to you now. Waiting today, waiting today. Come with your sins at his feet lowly bow. Come and no longer delay. Calling today, calling today. Jesus is calling, is tenderly calling today.
So I'm going to leave you with a paraphrase of something else I read this week as our benediction. Go this week and remember, we are created in God's image. Our place is in relationship with him. We belong wherever he places us. We are complete in him. Our people are all who are his, and we fit in and stay in according to his